Hey everyone, today we're going to run an experiment that looks very simple at first, but the deeper I started thinking about it, the more strange questions started appearing. Because almost every player has dropped a melon from a height at least once, but very few people actually tested if there is a limit where the game starts behaving completely differently. And the most interesting part is that somewhere in the middle of this video we're going to try to bypass a hidden limit inside the game that almost nobody talks about. And closer to the end we're going to run a final test that might completely change the result of the fall and reveal an unexpected physics mechanic. And even after that we're going to try to understand why these limits might exist in the first place, so make sure you watch until the end because the final result might be completely different from what you expect. First, we need to understand how falling actually works in Melon Playground, because many players believe everything depends only on height, but there is a theory that the game calculates much more than that, including fall speed, character position, impact strength, and even the environment. So first we're going to run a simple test to understand the basic mechanics. And then we're going to slowly increase the height to see where the game starts behaving differently. We place the melon at a small height and simply drop him down. And as you can see, everything works exactly how you would expect. The character takes damage, but sometimes can partially survive if the height is not too high. And this part is important because now we are going to slowly increase the height to understand where the real survival limit begins. Now we lift the melon much higher, to a point where most players usually stop doing experiments, and we drop him again. The fall speed becomes much faster, the impact becomes stronger, and survival here is already almost impossible, but the game still behaves logically. The higher the fall, the stronger the damage. However, this is where things start getting interesting. Because now we are going to lift the character to a height where the map itself starts looking extremely small. And this is exactly where players sometimes notice strange behavior. We lift the melon even higher, the map almost disappears from view. Everything around starts looking empty and unusual. And according to player theories, this is where physics sometimes starts breaking. Because the game was never originally designed for distances like this, we place the melon, and wait, what? He didn't even start falling, and he is already dead. This looks extremely strange, almost like there is a hidden height limit where NPCs simply cannot exist anymore. This means we can't even properly test the fall itself, because the character dies in mid-air. And this is where the middle part of our experiment begins, because now we are going to try to bypass this limit, and if this works, we might finally see the real result of falling from an extreme height, and closer to the end of the video we are going to try an even crazier test that might completely change the impact result. There is one thing in the game that might help us bypass this limit, and that is the immortality potion, because if it works the way players believe it does, the character might survive the moment where he normally dies. So we place the melon again, give him the immortality potion, and now we send him down, and now the experiment becomes much more interesting, because if the character does not instantly die, we might finally see the true result of falling from an insane height. The melon starts falling, the speed increases every second, and now everything depends on the moment of impact, because many players believe water can soften fall damage, so we send him directly into the ocean. And impact, wait, he didn't instantly disappear, which already looks unexpected, but impact alone is not everything, because sometimes characters survive the collision but get destroyed by physics reactions afterward. Now we reach the part of the experiment that could change everything, because now we are testing the theory that water depth might affect the result of the fall. Some players believe that deeper water increases survival chances. So we lift the melon to an extreme height again and repeat the fall, but this time into the deepest part of the ocean. We lift him even higher than before. The map is almost gone. Everything around looks empty. And honestly, I almost don't expect the character to survive this impact. The melon starts falling again. The speed is even higher than before. And now the most important moment of the experiment happens. And impact, wait, that result looks different, and now things become really strange, because the character reaction is not the same as before, and if water depth really changes survival chances, that means the environment itself might affect the physics of the game. But this is still not the final test, because now we are going to try the craziest experiment in this video. Now we're going to test something almost nobody checks, because there is a theory that character position during the fall might slightly change the impact strength. So now we lift the melon even higher and force him to spin while falling, and if this really affects physics, the result might be completely different. The Melon rises to an insane height again. The map is barely visible, and now the fall begins. He starts spinning. The speed becomes extreme, and this is easily the most dangerous test in the entire video. Because if something changes now, it means the game calculates fall damage in a much more complex way than players think. And impact, and honestly the result was completely different from what I expected, because this experiment shows that Melon playground physics might be far less predictable than it seems. And experiments like this prove that sometimes the game reacts differently because of small details most players never think about, and it makes you wonder how many hidden mechanics still exist inside the game. Because if even simple falling experiments can produce different results, there might still be many secrets inside Melon playground waiting to be discovered. But the questions don't end here, because after all these tests another theory appears that players rarely talk about. What if the height limit exists for a reason? Maybe it was added by developers to protect the physics system from breaking, or maybe it is a limitation of the game engine itself, but sometimes limitations like this become part of gameplay and create new mysteries for players. And if you think about it, hidden limits like this might be exactly what makes experiments in Melon Playground so interesting, because every time players think they tested everything, the game can suddenly show something completely unexpected. And honestly, after this experiment there are even more questions, because we tested height, water, depth, and character position, but there are still many factors almost nobody has tested, like different objects, different launch speeds, or even different maps, and maybe if players continue experiments like this, they might discover even stranger mechanics that are still hidden right now. And now the biggest question becomes, does an absolute height exist where survival is impossible under any conditions, or does everything depend on combinations of factors players still haven't fully discovered? And maybe this is only the beginning of experiments that could reveal how complex Melon Playground physics really is, because the more we test simple things, the more we realize the game might be hiding much more than it shows at first glance. And now I'm really curious to hear your opinion, because experiments like this always create a lot of theories. So write in the comments what you think should actually happen when falling from extreme heights. Do you think water should always save the character? Or is there a point where nothing can help anymore? Maybe you think ocean depth plays a huge role, or maybe you believe everything depends only on falling speed. Or maybe you have a theory that the game is hiding certain limits that players just haven't fully discovered yet. Make sure to write how you think physics should work at these heights, because sometimes your ideas help create new experiments that nobody has tested before. And maybe one of your theories could become the idea for the next test that reveals something even stranger and more unexpected inside Melon Playground.